When Richard Nixon was running for president in 1968, a war was being fought in the jungles of Vietnam. Protesters were filling the streets at home, and many people wished we could go back to a simpler time. Like the 50s.
Digga Daddy-O.
In the 1950s, Nixon had served as vice president under Dwight Eisenhower. Nixon's experience made him seem like the perfect choice to restore the peace and prosperity of the Eisenhower years. In 1968, at the height of the war, Nixon pledged to
bring an honorable end to the war in Vietnam.
And that was an offer America couldn't refuse.
Richard Nixon was elected because of the Vietnam War. He promised that he would end it. He, in fact, extended it.
Nixon figured a peaceful chat with the North Vietnamese might clear up some misunderstandings. Unfortunately, the North Vietnamese disagreed, and Nixon tried to end the conflict the old-fashioned way. When increased bombings failed to end the war, Nixon got back on the peace train. He negotiated a ceasefire with North Vietnam, ending America's involvement in the war at last. Ending war seemed to be Nixon's special talent, so now he turned his efforts toward the ongoing war against communism. His attempts to end the Cold War sent him out to the two biggest battlefields, China and the USSR.
Richard Nixon, a lifelong anti-communist, went to what used to be called Red China because his vision extended far enough to realize that it was in the interest of the world, the Chinese and the United States, for China to come out of its self-imposed isolation.
Peacemaking may be serious business, but it's not all talks, translators, and state dinners. The game of ping-pong diplomacy was on. When members of the U.S. and Chinese teams visited one another's countries and played a few matches, helping to ease tensions and open talks between their governments. The Soviets weren't invited to the ping-pong party, but they took it with a grain of salt. SALT stood for the Strategic Arms Limitation Treaty, signed by President Nixon and the leader of the Soviet Union, Leonid Brezhnev. The treaty called for the United States and the USSR to stop making nuclear weapons for 5 years. Great news! All aboard the peace train. Of course, both countries still had a pretty impressive collection of weapons, but Nixon's diplomatic skills had definitely helped thaw the Cold War. Nixon was re-elected in a landslide victory. But just when the stuffy guy in the suit and tie had convinced the world to give peace a chance, along came a little thing called Watergate.
Watergate, in which he helped conceal a criminal conspiracy, brought him down. And he's the only president of the United States to have had to resign his office.
During the 1972 presidential campaign, 5 men were caught burglarizing the Democratic Party headquarters in the Watergate office complex. They worked for Nixon and were looking for inside information about the Democrats that could help Nixon win his re-election. This was decidedly unpresidential behavior, and it just got worse. Further investigation by news reporters revealed campaign fraud, illegal wiretapping, and a secret fund to pay people off. Not exactly the kind of thing an honest 50s-style president should be doing. The U.S. Senate looked into the accusations, and former staff members testified that audio tapes existed of Nixon planning to cover up the break-in. Bad news for Nixon, since covering up a crime is also a crime.
Well, I'm not a crook. I've earned everything I've got.
The president fought back against the scandal, but there was only one way to make peace with an angry nation.
I have concluded that because of the Watergate matter, I might not have the support of the Congress that I would consider necessary to back the very difficult decisions and carry out the duties of this office in the way the interests of the nation will require. Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
The president works for the people, and one of the great tragedies of many recent presidents is that they thought they didn't have to tell the truth to the public. And the cover-ups, the concealment, the lies, the half-truths have, in the end, presidents who I believe wanted to do good wound up destroying themselves.
Nixon did a lot of great things as president, He got pretty far on that peace train and was a dedicated public servant. But after the Watergate scandal, he became the first president ever to resign the office. After that, having good feelings about Richard Nixon's presidency became a bit trickier.
How do you like me now?